I'm now moving on to the homework problems in lesson number 3. And for lesson number 3, the concept is multiplying radicals. All right, so let's take a look at question number 1. I need to multiply the radicals and simplify. Now for multiplying radicals, the general rule is you want to multiply the inside numbers with the inside numbers, and then you would also multiply the outside numbers with the outside numbers and simplify where possible. So for letter A, I have 3 on the inside and 2 on the inside. So inside with inside, 3 times 2 is going to be 6. So my final answer is going to be the square root of 6. And since I can't break down that radical anymore, that's my final answer. For letter B, I have a 2 on the inside, and I also have 11 on that inside radical. So inside times inside, 2 times 11 is going to be 22. So my final answer is the square root of 22. Moving on to letter C, my inside numbers my inside numbers on the radicals are 13 and 13. So 13 times 13 is 169. So the square root of 169 is going to be 13. So that one works out really nicely. So this answer is going to be just 13. Another thing that you can do with these kind of problems is that if the inside numbers are exactly the same, you can just combine those two numbers into those two 13s into a single 13, and the final answer is just 13. So there's a quick way to do that, or you can just do it the long way like I did the first time around. For letter D, 7 times 5, that's going to be 35. So my final answer is the square root of 35. Okay, so let's move on to letter E. Letter E, I do have some outside numbers first. So I do have some outside numbers for this question here. So I can do outside with outside. So 4 times 5 is going to be 20. And then I can multiply the inside numbers with the inside numbers. So 3 times 2 is going to be 6. So my final answer is 20 root 6. Moving on to letter F, my outside numbers are -9 and -2. So -9 times -2 is going to be 18. And then inside with inside, that's going to be root 22. So 18 root 22. For letter G, there's an invisible 1 on the second root 13. So if I do outside with outside, 2 times 1 is going to be 2. And remember, if it's the same inside numbers, so 13 and 13, that just gives you a single 13. So 2 times 13 is going to be 26. So once again, this idea right here, it's going to be 13 times 13, which is 169, and the square root of 169 is 13. That's another way on how you can get 13. It's very similar to letter C here, very similar. Okay, let's move on to letter H, outside with outside. So 4 times 4 is 16, and then we do inside with inside, which is going to be root 35. So 16 root 35. Okay, let's move on to letter I. For letter I, these kind of questions we have to do a little bit more work. So let's start with the same concepts. 2 times 3 is 6, and 6 times 2 is going to be 12, so root 12 on the inside. Now the reason why we have to do a little bit more work with these kind of questions is because the 12 I can break down into its prime factors. So I have a 4 and a 3. So 4 times 3 is equal to 12. And I can break down the 4. I can break down the 4 into 2 and 2. And notice that I do have my prime numbers now, so 2, 2, and 3. And that means I'm done with that 4. So let's focus on the pairs here. There's a pair, and then the 3 doesn't have a pair. So if I simplify this tree diagram into a simplified radical, it's going to be 2 on the outside and then 3 on the inside. So that 3 goes on the inside because it doesn't have a pair. And then just to finish up, remember we had a 6 here at the start, so this 6 will multiply with the 2, and our final answer is going to be 6 times 2, which is 12, so 12 root 3 is my final answer for that particular problem, 12 root 3. Okay, let's move on to letter J. Let me erase that. Okay, so outside with outside, 3 times 7 is 21, and inside with inside, 5 times 10 is going to be 50, so 21 times root 50. And then I can break down the 50 into 5 and 10. And then the 10 I can also break down into prime factors, 5 and 2. And then let's go ahead and box the prime numbers here. I'm done with that 10. And based on that tree diagram, if I simplify the radical, I get 5 root 2, once again, the 2 that doesn't have a partner, so that goes back on the inside. And just like the previous problem, I would take this 21 here and I would multiply with the 5. So 21 times 5 is going to be 105 root 2. And that's my final answer for letter J. Moving on to letter K, I have a negative 8 and 6. Negative 8 times 6 is going to be negative 48. And then if I times inside with inside, that's also going to give me, well, 6 times 8 is going to be 48. And then we need to rely on the tree diagram now to break down 48 into its prime factors. So I can use 6 times 8, and then I can break down 6 into 3 and 2. 8 can break down into 2 and 4, and this 4 can break down into 2 and 2. So quite a bit of factors there. So let's go ahead and box all the prime numbers. Remember, when we simplify the radical based on the tree diagram, we need prime numbers. So let's get rid of all these numbers because they have been broken down into. So there's a 2 and there's a 2. So this first pair gives me a single 2, and this pair gives me another 2. So 2 times 2 is going to be 4. So I got a 4 there. And then this 3 goes on the inside. So 4 root 3 based on that tree diagram. And then once again, I take this negative 48 at the start, and then I multiply with that 4. And negative 48 times 4 is going to be negative 192 times root 3. And that's my final answer there. Okay, so that's it for letter K. And then I can move on to L next, letter L. All right, so for letter L, let's take this negative 7 times it with the negative 2. So that's going to give me a 14. And 12 times 6. 12 times 6 is going to be 72. After that, let's go ahead and break down the 72 into its prime factors. So 8 and 9. 9 is a little bit easier. That's going to be 3 and 3. 8 is going to be 4 times 2. And this 4 will be 2 times 2. After that, let's go ahead and box our prime numbers. And then let's go ahead and just highlight the pairs. There's a 2 there. There's a 3 there. Okay, so this 2 that pair of 2 becomes a single 2. This pair of 3s will become a single 3. So 2 times 3 is going to be 6. So I have a 6 here, and then notice that that 2 there, which I've highlighted in blue, doesn't have a partner there. So that one just goes back inside the radical there. So your attention to detail has to be pretty good here. And then finally, the 14 times the 6. 14 times 6 is going to be 84. So 84 root 2 is the final answer. Okay, so we have a few more of these kind of problems to go through, and then we'll be done homework number 3. For homework number 3, for letter M, I have 3 numbers on the outside. So let's multiply all the outside numbers together. 3 times 2 is 6, and 6 times 5 is going to be 30. So 30 on the outside. And then on the inside, I have 7 times 6, which is 42. And 42 times 2 is going to be 84. So 84 on the inside. And then from there, I need to break down the 84. I'm thinking about 6 and 14, 3 and 2. 14 is going to be 2 and 7. And here's my pair right there. So based on that tree diagram, if I simplify the radical, it's going to be 2 based on the pairing there. And you'll notice that, and then you should notice that the 3 and the 7, they don't have pairs, so they will go back on the inside as 3 times 7, and 3 times 7 is going to be 21. So 21 on the inside. And then just to finish this off, 30 times 2 is going to be 60. So my final answer here is going to be 60 root 21. Or maybe I can write 60 root 21 at the very bottom. Okay, let's move on to the next letter. So 4 times 3 is going to be 12. And then 12 times 7 is going to be 84, I believe. And then let's do the inside numbers. 3 times 6 is going to be 48. And 48 times 3 is going to be 144. We'll just double check that with the calculator here. 8 times 6 times 3, yep. And then 4 times 3 times 7, yep. And the square root of 144, we should definitely know that. 2 numbers that multiply to 144 is 12 and 12, so 12 times 12 is 144. So the square root of 144 is 12. And 84 times 12 now, that's a bigger number. That's going to be 1,008 as a final answer there. Okay, let's move on to the next two letters. For letter N, there's a power 2 there, so if I had to go ahead and expand this, it would be 3 root 8 times 3 root 8. And we can use our same kind of concepts. 3 times 3 is going to be 9. And then we can do 8 times 8, which is root 64. And root 64 is going to be 8, so 8 times 9 is going to be 72. So 72 is my final answer for that one. And if we move on to letter O, there's a power 2 there, so this will be negative 2 root 2 times negative 2 root 2. And once again, let's do outside with outside. So negative 2 times negative 2 is going to be 4. And root 2 times root 2, well, that's going to be the square root of 4. And the square root of 4 is going to be 2, so 2 times 2 is going to be 8. So 4 times 2 is 8 for the final answer there. Okay, let's move on to the final two questions in this homework guide. Let's do outside with outside. 5 times 3 is going to be 15. And now we got to do inside times inside. And the way I would set up this problem now is I would take this 81 and the 2, and let's just write that as 81 over 2 times the 50 over 9. So 50 over 9. All right, so this is what it looks like. And then from there, let's just go ahead and let's just simplify our work here. If I take a look at this 81 and that 9, if I simplify that, that's going to be a 1, and that's going to be a 9. If I take a look at this 2 and that 50, this will be a 1, and that's going to be a 2. And now if you look at your whole square root, you have this 9 here, so, oh sorry, I made a little mistake here. It's supposed to be 25 here. So let me just erase the colors here. This will be 9 times 25. So I would go ahead and simplify the fractions first by reducing the numbers. So we have a 25 over here. Once again, I do apologize for that mistake. And then from there, ask yourself, what's the square root of 9? Well, the square root of 9 is going to be 3. And what's the square root of 25? Well, the square root of 25 is going to be 5. And then after that, you can multiply these numbers out, and you should get 225 as a final answer for that problem. Okay, let's move on to the last one here, letter Q. There is an invisible 1 here, so negative 3 times 1 is going to be negative 3, square root sign. And then let's go ahead and take a look at the 6 and the 15. So let's just write that as 6 over 15 times 10 over 9. And then from there, let's go ahead and simplify this. If I look at the 6 and the 9, that's going to be a 2 and a 3. If I take a look at the 15 and the 10, that's going to be a 3 and a 2. And if I go ahead and keep on breaking down the fractions here, I now have 2 over 3 times 2 over 3.